Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Group Therapy presented to you by Optic. Today, I have Jason and Derek here with me, and today we are going to be covering ELR. So, conversation we always get here in the office is, what is ELR and what makes it? So,
what are some unique challenges that you face when shooting ELR instead of just normal sort of long range? So, Jason, if you're awake, I want to ask about what is your sort of,
where does it start?
Where does it start for you?
I would have to say beyond a mile.
Beyond a mile? See, I was thinking closer to 1,1600.
Yeah, I'm
right before it.
I mean, if you look at competition-wise, like King of 2 Mile, typically first target they engage on day one's 1,500. Same with NRA ELR. So that's kind of where... And I view it as, especially like if you're looking at it from competition standpoint, but when you really break down into things, I will say about a mile is where you got to look into it.
It's somewhere in that 260-yard range that we've kind of given here, because it's outside the max effective range of most rounds on the market. So it takes a little bit of a more specialized caliber, scope, rifle. There's more to consider. There's more things to check when shooting that versus sort of normal long range out to,
it's changed with time too.
So.
I mean,
of course,
10 years ago I would have said beyond 1,000.
Yeah, ELR in the 1800s was like 200 yards. So I mean,
shoots and fest.
Now
who was that Civil War guy that got shot in the neck? He was on his horse. He said, his guys were staying ducked down out in the middle of Gettysburg or something, and he's on his horse. He said, "What are you ducking down for? Those guys couldn't hit an elephant at this range," and he was instantly shot in the neck by some marksman, I think from like 300 yards away.
Yeah, it was like 375 or 400 with an old Sharps rifle with the old brass tubes optic on it, and then now look where we're at today.
Yeah, a little bit advanced. Yeah.
But I was going to say, carrying on with that, where do you guys see starting caliber-wise? I want to get into this. Where are we looking caliber, bare minimum?
To hit the mile break, you're talking?
Correct. And
minimum?
Consistently, not just launching rounds downrange to say, not I hit it a mile.
A hot 6.5, I'd say, is probably minimum.
Hot 6.5 mag or 300 mag.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've seen, there's a few 7s that could probably do that. 20.
Well, that still counts.
28
6.5 mag and above.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay. Looking at it that way.
Yeah,
so,
6.5 PRC. But same thing as, looking at what you're running into is you're running them that hot, you're melting bullets.
Well, they've kind of defeated that theoretically at this point. So I can tell you the old AMAX, though, they're melting on me now. But
that's why they made the ELD, right?
Yeah.
But, as far as calibers, we'll get into this, I'm sure, here in a second, but it's about way more than just the caliber itself. Like, I have some data that we can kind of reference here.
For starting with caliber, I'm going to hopefully be shooting a match that goes out to 2K later this year, and my intention is to run 6.5 PRCs to make it something that will still be competitive there, but give me an advantage on handling. So
when you say handling, do you mean like the rifle, like a smaller rifle?
All around, everything. Either whether it's carrying the rifle, fielding the rifle, driving the rifle, but also being able to get back on and see the impact, which is the single most important thing in precision shooting.
Yeah, well, you said that about 1 million times so far. Yeah. But the thing is, when you're shooting that far, you can recover from a 50 cal recoil and be back on target. You have way more time to recover.
This is out to 2,000 though. No, it's not starting at 15. It's starting at 0.
Oh, okay. Well, there's that. Because you'd say most of the time out of a 6.5 Creed or PRC, you'd be able to see your own impacts, depending on your scope setting, of course, and all that, starting at what, 300 to 400?
Depends how heavy the gun is, how good, if you're running a brake or can. Or
a typical sort of match gun, 15 pounds or so, 16
with
pounds. With a brake. Decent shooter, scope.
I would say 300. I would say that's a fair assessment is 300 that you can spot your impacts.
Yeah. Now shooting a 300 Win. I'd say closer to 400 on that one. That was a hunting rifle.
With a hunting rifle, good break, I can see at about 375, 400, but it takes a lot to get used to.
Got to be a really good position too.
Correct.
It does. A
lot of variables.
Yeah.
But going back into this, let's kind of hit on, before we dive deeper into the whole caliber thing, let's hit on data. ELR is pretty much being a mad chemist, both environmentally and when it comes into the reloading room, or just getting dope from out of your Kestrel or whatever ballistic solver you use.
Yeah, I've got some data here that I've kind of pre-positioned, and normally we want to see a good spread between your velocities. You want to keep a small spread between.
A tight ES.
Yes, that's right. So typically you'd say for factory ammo, what would you say a good ES would be, plus or minus?
For factory ammo?
Factory first. We'll talk hand loads in a second.
Probably under 50 is good for factory.
Under 50.
I mean, I've seen great factory ammo with, and again, custom rifles and stuff. I mean, if you're seeing 15 to 20, I mean, that's awesome.
So I did a calculation here.
But most of the time, you're right. It's about 25 feet per second. But
so
you can get 15 to 20.
If you're shooting a 300 Norma.
Were you talking plus or minus or ES?
Plus or minus.
Okay, I'm talking ES.
Oh,
specifically
gotcha,
ES.
gotcha.
So
okay. So here
under 50 is good.
Correct. ES, extreme spread. I was talking plus or minus 15. So you're looking at about 30 ES.
So here's how I did this one. With a 300 Norma, 10 feet per second high or low, plus or minus 10 feet per second.
Stick with ES, then everyone's on the same train here.
Okay.
So 20 ES.
20 ES, okay. It at 1,000 yards, that would produce about 1.5 inches difference of impact.
So 3 inches extreme spread versus 20 feet per second extreme spread at 1,000.
Right. So it would create that much on target. If you push that out to 2,000 yards, which the 300 Norma can definitely hit, that turns into 2 feet. And you're off target at that point, depending on what you're shooting at.
So 20 feet extreme spread at 2K turns into 2 foot extreme spread vertical.
Yes. So monitoring your muzzle velocity, because I think a lot of what comes down to ELR, and that's kind of related to this rifle, actually. This is a 375 Shytech. A quick aside on the 375 Enabler. Isn't the whole point of that cartridge to be more consistent on the velocity, even though it's a little bit slower than the Shytech?
Over time.
Over time.
I believe it is over time, as in barrel break-in, just you're getting more consistent velocity in a barrel because you're not changing it as quickly. Was the deal.
Got it. So the point is, it's not so much the velocity itself, which is important, but the consistency, the tolerance for consistency is way higher when you're doing ELR. Because it's more forgivable at...
It's like drag racing tires.
Yes.
Yeah.
The barrels turn into drag race tires then at that point, not normal car or truck tires.
Right.
It's a great analogy.
So your window is much narrower. Your window of precision, your window of required precision is much narrower.
Yeah, I mean, the rifle has to shoot.
Circling back quick to your 20 feet ES causing 3 inch at 1,000. That's what I always operated under when I was shooting 1,000-yard bench rest. Was I wanted to see an ES under 20 because it would allow a world record level amount of vertical.
Yeah, which is
at that point.
sub.
I don't
What's
even
it
know
now?
what it is now, but
sub 3 for sure. 10-shot Williamsport.
that was light gun as well. So for me,
True.
I never did heavy gun stuff. But that was kind of it had to be under 20.
But I mean, hand loads these days. I mean, we all hand load. You guys get a bit more into it than I do. I mean, what are you getting for an ES or however you'd say it?
I'm still basically running. I mean, I'm only hand loading for the 22 Creed right now, and again, it is under 20 with my practices.
But you haven't felt the need to get more precise with that round. It's just not necessary.
No, because I'm doing, field varmint stuff, not
that's how I am.
Trust.
That's how I am with my 6.5 Creedmoor. I'm the same way in my hunting guns. If I'm seeing 30, 40 ES, I'm happy.
Give it another consideration.
You could be Kiefer and take an X-Acto knife and start slicing
kernels
in half.
Slice the kernels.
Boyd used to he would separate his primers by weight and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's pretty advanced stuff. But I mean, I don't.
When you're trying to shoot a flat line at 1,000, that's something you want to look at doing.
And I mean, ELR hand loading. I mean, when you're looking at consistencies, because that's something. It's a controlled variable. And that's one thing when you talk with ELR shooters.
If you can control it, you gotta.
Exactly. That's a controlled variable. So having such as like an auto trickler that weighs down to the exact kernel and weighing your primer, sorting your brass, weighing your bullets, checking BCs of your bullets, making sure they're less than 1%. All that compared to where which we'll get into a little bit later, is environmentals.
Well, the whole drive of all of that.
That's something you can't control.
The whole drive of all of that is shrinking that ES to shrink that vertical. Because the vertical is the thing you can't control.
More consistent data is being able to have the most consistent data is what's going to make you successful being
vertical.
ELR.
It's not that you can't control, but you can't account for it once
it's gone.
You have a fixed vertical window as it goes out, and you can't make it smaller.
Right.
Correct.
Now, you had touched on the atmospherics and that sort of thing. Of course, you can't change that, even though we're told that humans are changing the climate. So what you need to do more so on that front is record keeping and observation. So having your Kestrel, typically altitude, temperature, good enough to record on a basic level for most shooters. But when you're going out, you need to be able to record not only, even if you're shooting at the same spot, you need to be able to check your actual pressure that day, your temperature. You need to be monitoring that to a much tighter scale than you would just kind of casually shooting 1,000 yards.
And that's really only if you're trying for a first round hit, which isn't always needed in these games. But if
you look at competition, I know there's for especially King of 2 Mile, and that's kind of where this whole ELR thing originated from. You get bonus points for first round impact, so that's even huge. You get an extra, I forget the exact percentage, but it's a very high percentage for first round impact. So that's even more important than saying hit number 5, because it goes off of a points chase to go out to that 2 mile target. So that's where you're looking at.
Where you'd benefit from that.
Is being able to say, okay, what is my load doing today in this environmental condition, and being able to true that up with whatever ballistic software you're using. And I know,
good rangefinder as well, for sure. 2 miles, pretty obvious. That'll be pretty strictly maintained. But a good rangefinder, you'd need to know exactly how freaking far you're shooting, because if you're off by just a couple yards, that bullet's coming down so fast at 2K, 2,500, 3,000 yards. That can make a pretty good difference as well.
Same thing with spotters too. Being able to have
that's tough.
Is having a good spotting scope, and as well as a good spotter as well. That's somebody that's been around it. That's
team of people watching different areas.
Exactly, because at that point you're losing trace. Yeah. When you're launching them at that distance, you're losing trace, and it's going to be you're watching for. Now you have hit sensors and stuff on the plate, so it's going to flash at you. But on a miss, you're looking for a speck of grass that flopped or a rock that rolled back down behind the target.
So 2 things on that. First, spotter. Yeah, you have to see a smaller detail at a much farther distance. Even though we're sending big old rounds at 2K plus, they're not going to hit with enough power to really make a big old splash and a hole in the ground. So being able to see that tiny little disruption in the soil or the grass, whatever it is that you're shooting near, being able to see that requires a really good spotter scope, and of course that's going to be a bit of money. The last time I shot 2K, we were using a Swarovski STR-80 with a reticle and such. We turned that reticle almost off. It was just barely visible. It was perfect, and we had that. We also had that MagnetoSpeed hit finder or that hit indicator. And before I've shot there before, they used to have a camera system. So they had a camera that was in front of a piece of steel about 10 yards in front of the target, and they had a directional antenna that would send that signal all the way down the little trail that it was on, and you could see it on your phone. It was really neat to make your shot and then look at your phone, and 3-4 seconds later, you can see that hit.
Yeah, and another interesting thing that you'll see in more field situations at that range, when the bullet's coming down at such an angle, if the angle of the ground is perpendicular to it, then it becomes really hard to see.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. We were shooting at a place out around a mile to 2K 21, and the angle, it was a pasture, like a hilly mountain area down in West Virginia, and the angle was very near perpendicular to the bullet impact, and if it was not dry, totally bone dry out there with a big round,
but it's not
it was soaking up 338s.
It's not like
couldn't see a thing on a trimmed by a cow pasture field with the grass half-inch high because of that angle.
Yeah.
Couldn't see a thing.
So it's like swan diving into a pool versus.
That's the nice thing is whenever I shot 2K, the furthest was we were in Arizona shooting on the side of a rock cliff. So that was awesome. So it worked out awesome because you could see right in on the rock cliff and then watch for a splatter impact.
And also you don't get too much mirage when you're high above the ground there.
Yeah.
So if you're just shooting, as I was in Florida, it was a trail. Yeah, and Florida, I mean, we had to get there almost at the dark of morning. That way we're starting before that frickin' sun comes up and starts baking all that stuff. But if you have the ability to shoot over nothingness, basically like a valley,
and that's what we were. So we didn't have the mirage issue, but it was the wind, because there's really no good way to read it, because it was just coming up out of that in a big roll.
Yep.
And you really had no idea. And
it was when you start getting a vertical component to wind, that makes things
it was almost
impossible.
It was almost 5. It was almost 7 to 10 mils because of that rollback. We were getting vertical on it, and you just really had no idea what was going on, because there was no good way to read it.
And then you just have to shoot quick.
Yeah, unless you let a smoke bomb off in the bottom of the canyon, that would have been about the only way to be able to tell.
What about optics? What would you look for optics when you're considering, let's say, a mile to 2,000 yards, maybe 3,000 yards, depending on how you're doing it. But
first focal plane with a ton of travel.
Travel forgiveness.
Travel, lots of it. So magnification for 2,000 yards. I mean, if you had to set a minimum.
Second consideration.
Consideration, yeah. 25 power. Yeah, I'd say for 2,000 yards, absolute minimum probably 20. With really good glass. I'm talking like.
Depends on your target too. If it's
a
real ELR type match, the targets are big.
Yeah.
I took a stupid target out we ended up being about 1805 with a 6.5 Creed and the tangent 25. But I was shooting at a popper.
You idiot.
Which is that was the convenient target I had handy. I hit it, but it was so, it's a little dude silhouette, 28 inches tall, I believe. And it was a small target.
Yeah. I mean, with the size of targets, I do want to touch on that for a brief moment, because every couple months we see this article, so-and-so, usually it's someone from Texas. Texas shooter hits a target at 87,000 yards, whatever, and you're like, Jesus, that target is they didn't get a target, they just got a garage door. I mean, even though as far as the MOA size, it is appropriate, like one MOA target, but at the same time, where's the limit here? How much is it getting pretty ridiculous as far as how big these targets are, as far as their size?
What's the point? If you can't regularly get pretty close, I don't know. I mean, it's entertaining. Yeah.
It's
entertainment only at that point.
MOA, for shooting a target of a prescribed MOA, it's still very impressive. But to me, I like to keep a more of a practical sort of use of the rifles. So things like, I'm not the one to hunt long range, but can you shoot a reasonably sized target at 2,000 yards on the first go or on the second go? A target the size of a barn door, okay, maybe, but vehicle, people like to replicate the types of shots seen in military snipers and that sort of thing. But when you're shooting a target that's 10 feet by 10 feet at whatever distance, I mean, okay. I mean, I get that, but
target MOA size per distance, I would say, is something that you got to look into.
Yeah. As
to what is considered ELR. Is it just like what we talked about earlier? Because there is a very fine line between just launching rounds downrange, maybe not in the most safest manner, versus actually having data.
Just turning your rifle into an anti-aircraft gun, basically?
Pretty much.
Just seeing where it lands?
Let's launch it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we're getting very near max range on rounds at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
At the next one, you just have to take one of these into orbit, fire it straight at the Earth.
And I was going to say, because
actually, we may be near max range. I don't know. I have to dig out Hatcher's notebook and see, but
I
think 50 cal max range is around 7 miles, maybe.
7 miles?
I think.
I think it's.
What if you just
20 years, but yeah, but it's
just send it.
But it's not 45 degrees though.
No, it's like 37.
31.
There's drag.
Yeah,
there's drag. Yeah, so
because furthest confirmed hit in competition is 41.37.
Okay.
Yards
in competition.
Yeah, there is a world record standard. You were talking about. That a couple days ago.
World record standard is, and every time you kind of get online, it always seems to change. But the requirement for it is 3 shots. Has to be first round impact. So you have to hit first round impact, and then your second, then 2 consecutive shots after that. And so, like, you can attempt it more than once in a day, but I believe it's an hour or 2 hours that
to consider it a cold bore.
To consider it a cold bore.
3 feet, 3 shots.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a 36 by 36 inch plate.
Not only is it actually cold bore, because these barrels don't take that long to actually cool off, but it's a matter of the conditions have changed in such a way where you can't just sit there with 500 rounds of ammo and just start lobbing it until you hit a few times and then just call it. Yeah,
and call it cold bore, exactly.
It requires. That's what I'm talking about.
It's a total reassessment of the condition, really.
Yep.
Yes. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
It's not as much to the gun. Really the original cold bore meaning would be first shot of the day.
Right.
And that's where, if you're talking like tracking your 100-yard zeros or something, that's more meaningful. But in this case, they're just calling it cold bore because in an hour, the wind has changed.
We're more to like a hunting scenarios where tracking cold bore is going to be way more important because you have one shot to get it done, where cold bore definition here is a total reassessment of environmentals.
Exactly. And that works for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Just the other night when we were out shooting groundhogs out to 1,100 yards at our position, we could feel next to nothing. It was only and I had to if I could stand up like down prone or sitting spotting, I felt nothing. Right. I had to stand up and then I could sometimes feel it on my cheek. So 1 to 2 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And over the span of 2 hours, we ended up having to correct 0.8 of a mil in either direction. And we could never at any time feel that change. Well, no, it changed. It wasn't fishtailing. Okay. It wasn't changing that quick, but it changed over the course of, in 2 hours, it had a 1.6 mil swing in the opposite direction.
That works.
And we never felt it.
Right.
And that's, running a 22 Creed at 1,100 yards.
Getting back to scopes, we kind of drifted off on a tangent, or this is a vortex. So we say we like a lot of travel.
And travel first. Power secondary, 25 minimum, right?
Yeah, 25 minimum.
But would you put glass quality? Would you put glass quality over power, or would you put power over glass quality?
Well, there's a certain degree to that.
At the point where
trying to check a box off, like you're going down through what boxes as you go down the line. What's your
glass
1
quality
through 5?
will kind of follow. If you've got a high power scope with that much travel, you're getting into the level of stuff where it's not as much of a concern, I would say.
Right. 24 versus 25, you're not noticing that.
No.
20 versus 25, okay, now we got to start to weigh that. And it's really a tough call because something like, what about NX8 32 power versus ATAC guard 25 power? Now it's
you're out of the travel game in that case.
Exactly. So that's something that you have to worry about. As far as how much you need, a lot of people just go right for the magnification and don't even consider the power. And we often have these conversations. We talk to the customer and I'm like, what are you shooting? And exactly what are you shooting? What's your drop at the expected range? And how does that influence your scope? Now, my 300 PRC, I have a Collis 525 on. It's got 29 mils of travel. I have that on a 20-minute air attack mount, so about 6 mils. So I'm going to round some numbers here for that. I did find out that I would run out, let's see here, at 1,800 yards, I'd run out of travel. So if I want to shoot 2,000 yards, I'd have to hold 5 more mils.
Which is simple.
It's simple, but people need to know that if you have a super high-powered scope, like let's look at this Vortex real quick.
6 to 36.
636. This is an MOA one. So at full magnification, I'd say practically you're seeing
6.5 mils probably.
Well, this is MOA 16. You're seeing the 16 MOA marker. So that's about what, 4 or 5 mils? 5.
5. Yeah.
5. Yeah. So in this instance, at max power, that's what you would say. So.
Yeah, most time on a 25, you're seeing 8 to 9 mils, I believe.
25 power, I can practically see 24 MOA. So that's about what, 8?
7.
7?
6,
7 mils?
7.
Yeah, so basically when you're figuring out how far can you shoot with your proposed situation, you can factor in your scope travel, your mount, slope to it, and then how much of that reticle can you see at the desired magnification. Now, Craig Harrison, I think, the British sniper, he had that 2,700 yard 338 kill on some Taliban machine gunners. He had a Schmidt 525, I think, with an H59 reticle, if I'm not mistaken. He had to back his scope down to 15 power, so I heard, because the bullet was dropping outside not only the travel of the turret, but also the field of view of the scope at higher power at 25. So he backed it down to 15 and then made those shots.
I had to do that back in the day. First time I actually shot beyond 1,000, I only had a 308. So I provided a venue for some other guys.
Yeah.
And they brought big guns. I just had my 308, and this was back in 2002. And 1,400 yards is where we started. And I had an old 5.22 NXS, dialed 70 MOA, and I had to run the power all the way down to 8 to hit. And I hit on third shot, walked it in, hit on third shot, ended up being like 70 or 72 MOA total. I had to back calculate. I actually did the math afterwards.
Right.
Back calculated to see how it came in, according to the calculation. It was very close to what JBM in the day.
So there are examples of people making.
You can make it work. It's not ideal though if you're holding out of
center. It's far
center.
from ideal. Yes.
Yeah,
but if we're talking the utmost in practicality with acceptable deviations for it's going to be a challenge, but you can make it happen. That's kind of where we're sticking to. Of course, 1 power for every 100 yards ideally, but once we start getting to these really, really far shots and distances, you might have to kind of abandon that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the good news is the targets are bigger. And
scopes are out these days that give you the magnification and the travel. So usually, take that NXS, for example. You had a 5.5-22 that had 110 minutes. I used to have an 8-32 that had 65, which was absolute garbage.
Yeah.
I bought that before I really knew what I was doing. And ironically, I had to shoot it at 22 power anyway because it was second focal plane, and that's where the reticle is subtended.
Yep.
But nowadays you can have.
Back then, that was
the hot ticket.
Pretty much the top end scope.
Yeah, that was 2010 or so. 11.
Well, okay, not quite.
So
there was some other. Like
I was
the PM2 was still out. Yeah.
Yeah. PM2's been out for about 1,000 years now. So, this scope's a good one for that. The ATAC R735's got 100 minutes of travel, maybe a bit more. People are saying that it actually clicks a little bit more than 100.
Oh, yeah, I got a $130 on one of the original pre-pro scopes.
Right. So, but if we're just going off of the published figures, which we have to, it's still plenty sufficient. PM2 is going to have the MOA equivalent of about 88, 90 in mils, of course. So, it's one of those things that people really have to pay attention to.
Then you get into the mount scenario too.
I was just getting ready to go in.
Yeah, go into that. So this, for example, 40-minute rail, right?
Yep. So, and that's kind of what I was going to pose. That question that's a big question we get at. What is the best mounting option I can? And now when we're talking ELR, most of our zeros are going to have to be at 300, but the guys that are running the 6.5s to the 300 PRCs, a lot of them still want to zero at 100 yard because it's agreed.
Me too.
I'm the same way.
I'm still on 100. I'm good there.
And that's just because with us out here, it's easy. It's a lot easier to find a 100 yard range than a 300 yard range.
Yeah.
It also depends on whether you're building a dragster.
Yep.
Or whether you're building something you want to be able to take off road and on road.
And also a big bore it's more difficult to see exactly where the center of that group is relative to your paper bullseye, because if you're shooting a 50 cal and you have a 1 minute group, your dot could be somewhere in that ragged in that
You're losing
in that hole.
Your center aim point. Yeah.
So when you have a 300 yard zero, those rounds spread out enough that way there's paper between each hole, and you can see exactly where the center of that group is compared to where the center of your bullseye was. So it's not as big a deal, but
you just do an offset 0 at 100 as well if that's
you could, but it's getting
just weird.
It's just weird, but I'm just saying that's what I pay attention to.
Typically, you're seeing 40 MOA setup. I'd say that's kind of
on the gun.
On the gun.
Then
for
you have
an ELR
the uniqueness of adjustable mounts.
Yes.
Yeah, but basically, if you want a closer in zero, say 300 and in, make sure that your slope combination rail mount or just rail, like in this case,
no more than half.
Right? No more than half of your scope's travel. Yep. So this scope's got 130 MOA of total travel. So theoretically, I'd like to see no more than 65 MOA on that. So this is 40. I could afford to put a 20-minute mount on this and still be good, still be able to get a closer in zero. That's how I had my 375 was an 8-tack GAR 525.
60 mo on the.
Yeah, it was a same situation. 40-minute rail.
Oh, it was 40.
Is this 40?
No, I mean yours. I was thinking it was 60.
Yeah,
total, or 60 in the rail.
Right. That was 40 rail, 20 on the air attack, and I was about 3 MOA from the bottom of the scope, and I was still, and that was a 100-yard zero actually. So
there's another consideration too. When you're trying to milk all of the travel out of a scope, operating in that last 10% top or bottom is not really the greatest place to be, because you'll be tilting that erector so far. You're looking through the edges of the erector. The glass quality will suffer, and you're maxing out the spring. Well, you get the crescent,
the crescent shadow at the very, very edge.
But then just in general, the quality of image will suffer, and maybe you're going to be at the edge of the spring, tension to where you could have some wonky things possibly as well. But biggest thing is the quality of the image suffers, field of view suffers, no big deal.
I think the last part you said, I don't think that's relevant for the top quality scopes that people are often
possibly.
I think we're fine there. But also, what would you do? What would be your method if you need to be able to hit, say, 2,000 yards with your gun, and you're not able to get your closer in zero? What are some methods, like if you're outside the limits of the optic at both long range and close range?
Just get your 300-yard dope.
I'm talking past 300.
So your 1,000-yard drop, say it's 7 mils. So you just 0.7 mils high at 100 and call it a 1,000-yard zero.
Right.
Because getting a 1,000-yard zero, I mean, obviously your group is bigger, so your precision and accuracy are suffering because of distance. So you take what your prescribed dope is, say 7 mils, and you 0.7 mils high at 100, and you have a really good 1,000-yard zero.
Yep. Either that or something pretty much a different version of the same thing is you max your turret down and do your group at 100 to 300 yards, somewhere in there where you want it. See how high it is. You can measure that either.
Just build in that offset.
Build in the offset into your Kestrel or whatever whatever ballistic software that you're running. You can program into it. My 100-yard group is 9 inches high, and then it will do the rest from there.
Yeah.
And that's also handy if you're doing a zero and you're in between clicks on these mil scopes. I've done that before.
Yeah.
When the system has the precision to tell you that.
When it does,
But I've had that one time with.
Yeah. But I mean, Schmidt-Bender kind of alleviates that now with their 0.05 clicks now, which is nice.
Right.
Yeah. So they're 327, the 545.
And then you've got the Vortex that can click in between.
For your zeroing, yeah, because when you loosen this and you dial smoothly, you zero with no clicks, which is very nice.
Yeah.
And then you can just index it to 0. So there is that.
I was going to say, and then something else here that we see very common on ELR that we haven't touched with is, and we get this asked, I went to an ELR match, what's the thing that's on the rail right in front of the scope?
Oh, yeah. It's a prism of some sort. There's a common one out there. I forget what it's called.
The Charlie?
Yep, Charlie TAC-Q.
Yeah, it offsets the incoming image by a prescribed amount.
Yep.
Say 100 MOA, 200 MOA, or mil, whatever it is. Knife Force makes, or used to make.
They still do.
Well, Charlie, so the guy behind the Charlie Tarek, Mr. Baker, he came up to me many SHOT Show years ago and started talking about this thing, and I know we talked about some improvements to his original design, which I think he put into it. Some magnets, I believe, were one of my original ideas for him.
For what?
To get it up out of the way, or for attachment or whatever. I don't remember this because this was years ago.
Okay.
This was probably
this is aluminum.
8 years ago.
Yeah.
No, within the device.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he that all started with him, as far as I know. So, and I think
It's a pretty neat
Nightforce is
idea.
the only other one that makes it. I'm not sure what's going on with that whole scenario, but having the prism is pretty interesting. I always try and do a mechanical. I'm not a huge prism fan just because it's adding another variable that I don't like.
And one more lens.
Yeah.
But, I mean, for those that might not understand what we're talking about, it's a piece of glass that sits in front of your scope, and it offsets the incoming light by that angle.
By a prescribed amount.
So one way to think about it is, let's say you have a dope, the Night Force one, they do a 50 MOA one and 100.
100.
So let's say you have a target out at whatever distance is 50 MOA. You could either dial that out of the turret, or you can leave it at 0, put that 50 right in front of it, and then hold dead on.
Yep.
And then when you want to shoot further, then you can dial further. So it's like a travel sort of booster, which is a really neat idea. But I think the market is still in the discovery phase of that thing. It's still kind of fringe, but it looks like it certainly has potential.
Right. It's definitely grabbing traction at King of 2 Mile to be able to be easier
because of the confines of current scopes. Really.
Yeah, I mean, there are highly specialized rigs that are used to shoot that far. I mean, something like this is a relatively practical setup. You can shoot close and far, but those rifles that are commonly seen at the King of the 2 Mile are purpose-built. The scopes are like 9 inches over bore. That way, when you angle them down, you can see over the muzzle and that sort of thing. Those are purpose-built sort of race guns, so to speak. That's your dragster, yeah. That's
I was going to say.
And then other than the Prism, then you've got adjustable mounts, which we got the Air Attack, which are more meant to be a set it and forget it kind of deal.
They are.
But there's some other, but they have been proven in the field by some people I know that they actually track very well. Mark he was shooting a 50 cal at 3K with a Night Force comp.
Okay. Well, wow.
In an adjustable.
You need all the travel you get with that thing.
Yeah. And he did show that it was repeatable for his needs.
It's not easy because you have to loosen some screws.
It's not easy.
It's not
then
like
there's some other, but it's robust. That's the whole point.
It is.
But then there's some others out there. I know Ivy's one of them. I'm sure there's more.
Yeah.
There's been back in the day. Well, I guess probably about 20 years ago, there was some guys out in Colorado shooting prairie dogs out to, he got out to 3,000 or so.
Jesus.
And
a prairie dog at 3,000?
I believe so. Yeah, there was 2 guys. I think Craig Slack was one of them, and Bruce Artis, maybe. It's really pushing my memory. But they were running
You're over 40
there was
now.
a guy,
it's okay. It's going to start to decline.
one of them was actually running a 308.
What?
308.
What?
I don't remember
when
what
did Colorado legalize weed?
I was going to say, this is starting to turn into the big fish story.
Right.
I caught a bass about this big. Now
they were doing it 20 years ago. And I remember one guy was running a 308, and one guy was running a 338 imp. And I believe they got past 3K on a prairie dog.
Jesus.
If I recall correctly. But they were using these.
Yeah.
These now I believe a defunct company with an adjustable mount that had about 5 inches of travel.
Yeah.
But so that's another way to accommodate the travel beyond the Prism would be adjustable mounts.
Yeah.
Which one of them's going to be needed, beyond 2,500 yards.
You're going to need something. Yeah. So,
unless you've got that Blackwater round, right?
I did get some data. I did get some data on that. Now, there's not a whole bunch of information surrounding that round, but I'm mixing some information together, so just in case. So they claim a 420 grain bullet at 35 frickin' 100 feet per second. So since they don't list what bullet that actually was, I found a substitute made by, I think it was Cutting Edge. They have a 420 grain MTH. And with 398 G7BC, some other info on that, you're looking at 3,000 yard drop of 24.7 mils.
That's exactly what my 6.5 did at 1,800.
So it's almost half. It's a little better than half as good. It's let's see, the 1,000 yard drop. I already told you. I told you what it was. Did you guess?
You
were in the room.
4.5, I think.
Yeah. It's 3.6 1,000. That's 11. 11 and a half MOA. That's like 308
wicked.
at 500.
Yeah, that's wicked.
That's about that sort of level. I mean, that is unreal. 2,000 yard drop. Let's see, 11.2 mils, 38.6 MOA, and then it goes. It starts transonic. Mach 1.2 at 2,700 yards, and it's subsonic by 3,300.
That is wicked.
Dragster.
That is a dragster round. I mean, the cases are 2-part. It's aluminum and steel.
Yep.
And the bullets are going to have to be CNC turned solids. So, I mean, what's the the cost of brass on that's got to be, it's going to be like, what, $10 a piece, and the bullets are going to be $3-4 a piece.
Let me pull up my pound of powder for one shot.
Yeah, when I was loading Chi-Tac, I got 40 rounds per pound of powder, I think.
That's about right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you hear, guys. It's about 40 rounds per pound of powder.
Yeah. Now, one thing I do like about the 375 versus other rounds like the 416, the 50 cal, is I can use almost a normal press, and I can use normal rifle Magnum primers.
Yes.
Versus specific 50 cal press, specific 50 cal primers. I do like that, but it does make that reloading just that little bit easier to find components for, especially now when primers are more expensive than gold. So
and finding
and it's a sweet spot on recoil and user interface side of things as well.
Yeah, because the 50 cal, people like the idea of the 50 cal, get into it because it's
big.
It's the biggest, it's the best, it's the highest number. Now, if you shoot a 750 grain AMAX, that's a pretty middle of the road match round for the 50 cal. It has a G1 BC of over 1. The G7, I don't know what it is offhand. I'm sure it's pretty darn high. But it's just too slow. It's too lazy. A 375 is going to be about 400, 500 feet per second faster with a very slight reduction in BC for some of it. This was years ago when I was shooting it, so there's new bullets out now.
Shooting inside of it with less recoil, basically.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, people need to just consider all of those different things.
Well, yeah, you're balancing. I mean, really, you're just fighting wind. So
yeah,
you got to balance all of those things against what's bucking the wind the best.
Fighting wind and consistent muzzle velocity.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, since we've really been nerding out here over data, let's get into something cool. Let's talk about rifles.
Yeah, Jason's been eyeing up this bipod here since I put it down with malicious intent.
Yeah, let's start getting into the cool stuff that we're not sitting here being a bunch of nerds. Let's talk about this bad boy sitting on the table and what else we can grab. So
for those who are just listening, it is a KDEX.
Or just woke back up.
Yeah, a KDEX Shadow in 375 Chi-Tac, 32-inch barrel. It's color.
Shadow in Stealth Shadow.
Just don't spoil the joke, a-hole. Anyway.
I just realized that.
It's actually a KDEX Stealth Shadow, and the model name is called the Shadow, so it actually works out pretty well. Justin, I'm pretty sure you can edit that and clean that up and make sure that I get credit for that joke. It actually matches pretty well, because this is Cerakoted, right? This chassis? Isn't it?
Should be, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
I think it is.
Cerakote all this
and
stuff.
the scope is not Cerakoted, it's anodized, and you can't, and that's hard to get to match, but I think they've done a really good job of getting this to match pretty darn close. The color tone is just right. It's just the sheen that's a little bit different. But yeah, 375 Chi-Tac. This is a Shadow.
Tenebrex has worked on the matching caps.
Tenebrex. This is when we had the Canadians in 2 weeks ago to check these out. Now, the bipod is also a KDEX, and the reason I got it, Jason, is because it was the only one. It was the nearest bipod at the top of the bin.
Just a little under bipoded.
It's a little under, yeah. So
that's why they make the bigger one.
Yeah, the Falcon.
The regular Falcon.
That's a Falcon Light, isn't it? Yeah. So a normal Falcon or a Thunder Beast one would be good, but the Falcon bipods, that's what we would collectively put on
from Atlas.
I'd go with the Super Cal over the 5H personally.
Nice. Big footprint.
Big footprint, and I like the lever.
That's what
the full-size Falcon has a big footprint as well.
It does.
That's why I just started running is that Super Cal, and it is a very nice bipod. We were playing with it here about 2 weeks ago.
It is. But yeah, this rifle here, we did a video on its bigger brother, the Tremor 50 cal, about a year or so ago. Fantastic rifle. So for getting into it for 375.
Insanely accurate as well.
Oh yeah, this is definitely one to look at. A nice 2 or single stage trigger, depending on how you look at it, or depending on how you set it.
Also fits really nice on your back when you're going for a motorcycle ride.
See, people didn't like that.
You wouldn't believe the comments people had.
I got
not happy about it.
I have a new bike now.
Just because it was too long.
We'll have to replicate.
Yeah, I get that.
It was like 20 seconds, not too much.
It was one of our first. It was our big premiere video at the time. We'll have to make it look real cool.
We'll have to do something else. Now that I got a new bike, people are going to like that too, I'm sure.
I'm still waiting to hear back from some guy that supposedly has a tank we can use for a video someday.
Yeah, that was BMP, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Soviet BMP.
I have no idea where we're at with that, but
we'll talk to our contact on that. Let's see where we're at, because I still have that plan that we discussed is still saved on my computer as far as everything and how we do it. So we're gonna work on that. But, back to the rifle. Cadex, this is a fantastic rifle. They can build them in so many different colors. I think they have 2 different barrel length options, or is it just 32?
They've got lots of options.
There's tons of options.
Yeah, so definitely a solid platform for the job.
Another awesome one, too, that talk about is the MRAD. And I've seen it, the Barrett MRAD. And with just being able, multi-roll, having a 6.5, you can put a 6.5 barrel on it for training purposes, 300 PRC barrel.
Training purposes.
Well,
see, you have to realize how absurd you sound when you take a caliber that is very capable.
Oh, absolutely.
And you call it the training round.
Well, when you're looking,
because the ammo's half price.
This is my practice Ferrari.
Yeah, exactly. For whenever you're talking ELR, for the sense of the conversation and the podcast we're doing today.
It's all relative. I passed a Bentley
ELR.
on my way to work today. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's all relative.
Yeah.
We can practice with the LR with the 22. I mean, you know, 22 dope at 300 is about the same as a mile with a 300 Win Mag PRC.
But doing the 6.5. Doing the 6.5 Creedmoor 300 PRC, especially for the matches that are out in Idaho, the Spear Point Ranch in Kansas, has a very popular rifle and cartridge for it. And then also you can do your 338 to join light class for ELR because there's a heavy and a light. So heavy is pretty much your race guns, your Ferraris, everything like that, your dragsters, where then your light class is your 338s such as a Cadex, your Barrett's.
AI, man.
AI.
My buddy George Ortiz has been doing lots of work with that 300 Norma.
Speaking of AI,
he actually won the last one with a 6.5 PRC.
Yeah, I mean, the
AX buddy were
AX50
teamed up with a 6.5
ELR.
Yep.
Is a rifle that we are. I mean, it's out now in the 50 cal. It's been out for a while.
Yep.
I'm hoping that they get barrels and bolts and all
Someday
that sort of stuff.
they'll have conversions to make it into a
which will be
Shy-Tac bolt face.
I will have grown a proper beard by then.
Probably not.
But damn. Oh, that's chalk one up for Jason. There's the whiteboard. When it happens, and we're being as patient as we can, it's going to be a really, really sweet rifle system.
Yeah.
But
27-pound 375, like the one you built, will run quite nicely.
28 pounds, mind you. But yeah, that would be pretty soft to shoot. And with the AI, I mean, that whole stock chassis multi-cal, that's going to be a really nice system. But yeah, even there.
And that gets kids and ladies involved as well. When you talk about a nearly 30-pound 375 with a brake on, I'd put my 9-year-old behind it after shooting yours.
Didn't you?
And I shot I shot it back in 2002, a Windrunner 408 with a brake.
Ooh, that's just like you went to Home Depot and got a tube and put a scope on it, right?
But the recoil on that was just incredibly low, much lower than I expected with a good brake and a 30-ish pound gun.
Women, they can shoot 50 cals. My fiance Skylar shot the Tremor, and it was just fine.
Yeah, I wouldn't put my kid on that, though.
Really?
No, not at 9 years old. No.
Oh, he'd be okay. He shot some good.
It's just a blast.
He's just a recoil. He's a recoil softy like his dad.
Yeah, it's the concussion blast that you're getting
the
back.
rifle doesn't really move a whole
lot.
No.
But you're getting all that gas.
And he's only ever shot suppressed guns, so that would be a little tough.
I wish I had your 9-year-old's problems.
Yeah, no.
I've only
you
ever shot suppressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
So we are missing one brand that we do carry that is another very popular option, Desert Tech.
Yeah, of course. I was going to say that. Yeah, I shot their HTI in the 50 cal orientation.
So small.
It is so small. So small.
Pretty cool when you have that much power in a 47-inch rifle.
It will
32 of that's barrel.
Yeah, of course. So you have the main 4 calibers: 50 cal, 416, Barrett, 408, and 375.
29, not 32.
Shy-Tac. 29, 32, whatever. But yeah, that's bullprop rifle. It's a bit different.
Similar weight that we just talked about, 27 pounds, I think, all up with the 50.
Yeah, I mean it's not any much lighter than some of the other rifles out there, but it's definitely nice and compact, which is nice. It's able to you can
put a can on it and you're at the length of a normal rifle.
Or just leave it intact. You don't have to get a special case for it. It fits broadside in the back of my Ranger, not like the Barrett that we did this video with the Vortex. Got to take that thing down to fit it in anything.
You can still drag bag it on your back on the motorcycle without folding it.
Yeah.
We folded it when we rode with it.
We folded the stock on the KX.
Well, this doesn't have to fold, and it's still that length.
Yeah.
I'll have to see if we replicate that just to troll people. People didn't like that. They also didn't like the way I pronounced the city in which these rifles were made. I practiced hard to figure that one out. I looked up how to pronounce it, and I still
But you're still not French. So.
Still not. Thank you.
You said it in the video. I thought, man, he knows what he's talking about. That sounds legit. And the world opened up on you.
You know what? Screw those people. Anyway, yes,
So Desert Tech.
Go on.
It's another multi-caliber.
Yes.
Another multi-caliber
But also,
option.
Multi-bolt face, which we have several of those.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do anything. Well, there's guys out there doing custom barrels for them as well. So
yeah, because
really
you can get the barrel extensions eventually.
So ShyTac 50, 308, Magnum, Lapua, all of those things on
2 guns,
Desert Tech platform.
Basically. Yeah, you can have 2 guns that do all that, which is very neat.
So we're coming up.
They've pushed their guns beyond 3. They've done a lot of media on their side as well. I think pushing beyond 3K.
Yeah.
So we're coming up close to an hour now. I'd like to hear you guys kind of tell a little bit more about your experiences personally in ELR.
Personally.
Go ahead, Jason.
We starting on my end?
Yeah, you're going to take up the most time, so.
Well, I mean, I've been doing it the longest.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got more.
Unless the son was here, then he'd probably take more time than you.
Yeah, well, he has killed groundhogs further than I have.
Actually, that's because he's a better shot than you.
Well, groundhog. Just one.
One.
But we almost got another one. I've been, I guess, say beyond 1,000 started back in 2002 when I had some random guys that I met on a forum come to a field, and we shot across a road, and we went out to 2,300. Mirage was horrendous. It was a day like this, like 90s, high humidity, and I don't think anyone hit at 23. We were hitting at 19 with a 338 Lapua. That's when I was talking about my 308 earlier. 308 to 1,400, and I landed the third shot in this 12-inch orange square that was in the middle of the plate. And I was like, all right, I'm done for the day. I was spotting the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So then we went out to 1,900, 2,300, and we're making hits at 19 with 338s. And my old buddy Ed had one of those AR single-shot 50s that you had to screw the breech plug in and out.
Oh, God.
It was like a muzzle loader, basically.
Those are the ones that you see exploding on the internet.
He hit the earth on the other side of the valley, but with the amount of 3 minutes of time between each shot, it didn't really work out very well.
Reload. 1 second.
So then...
got to hook a cordless drill back up.
Slower than a Civil War reload.
That would have been a good one, yeah.
Yep.
Are those the type of rifles that you might want to keep a bag of gauze with you?
Yes.
No,
definitely an
a specific video on
if it lets loose, you're not going to need gauze. But then did another 2,000-yard session with Bob Beck when we did a segment for his Extreme Outer Limits show.
6.5 284?
No. So that was at the course we did the next day. But for the show, he was running a 7 rum, and I was running his 300 rum. So we were tracking 0 to 1,200, or 0 to 2K. He has an amazing range out in Oregon. And it was interesting. We really saw the 7 rum kind of peter out at 18.
Mm-hmm.
So he was running 180 burgers. I don't even know if there was hybrids at that time. I don't think there was. Pre-hybrid, and then 230s in the
just the Toyota
in the 300 rum. Only the Toyota was making hybrid at that time. Yeah. So it was the 7 was noticeably less reliable starting at 18, and then at 2K made a second or third round hit on his plate, I think, which was a 2-foot square maybe. And then when I talked earlier about the popper at 18 with the 6.5, which was just for fun, but I made a hit. So made a nice little group in the side of that. If it had been like a full-size silhouette, there would have been far more on. But that was factory ammo. I was out of travel, so I had to hold over, but it ended up being about 25 mils. So, but really 2,000 is as far as I've made hits.
Right.
But done a lot of work between 0 and 2K.
Just going to send it.
Fun.
I was going to say my experience is mainly on the side of ELR rimfire. I've done a lot with the ELR rimfire side of things, pushing the limits of them 400 or 500 yard. But center fire, I made an impact at 2K out in Arizona with 338. But in a past life that I've had, I've been around a lot of very high-ranking, very well shooters in the ELR community, being able to pick their brains and everything like that, and seeing kind of the originate and talk with some of the founders of King of 2 Mile and the guys in Texas and the Spear Point Ranch stuff is very interesting just to sit down and talk and pick their brain about how this started. It's the same thing too with, like, I know Jason has some ties with the Precision Rifle series at the beginning, which is really cool to kind of see how just in the matter of a span of 15 years where we're at today with everything. But a lot of mine spent behind glass. I haven't got to shoot much, so the environmentals, the data points, everything like that, a lot of mine when I've been around those guys has been behind the glass, which is still incredible.
Still very educational.
It's insanely educational, and it's incredibly awesome. We were talking yesterday in the office about what's the furthest you've seen a trace, and all of us came down to about 1,200.
12 and change, yeah.
12 and some change, which is incredible.
Seeing 1,000 is pretty cool. I've actually watched a guy shoot a 45-70 at 1,000 one time. So what you do is you see it go, and you keep watching, and then it just comes straight from the sky.
I've seen the same thing too.
1280 was mine, and that was at a private range.
Yeah, mine was
what's
behind
nice
a famous driver.
Watching trace with binos.
Yeah. Because as soon as you get two eyes on, it's like you're inside that vortex. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is unreal to see that, to have that just slight depth perception is ridiculous.
Amazing. It's incredible.
I use the Vortex Kaibobs. Kaibobs? How do you actually pronounce that one? I don't want more people of the internet to come at me on this one.
I can't officially say, but I've always ever heard it as Kaibob.
Kaibob.
Okay. The 18x56, that's not the UHD, that one.
And even 10s.
Yes.
And get it, and I've seen a whole lot of trace over a whole lot of time, and I'm always, it's the closer you can get right over the head with binos.
Yeah,
you're just sitting there driving the bullet. It's wild.
You can't do it with 22 because they're gone without a trace.
Yes.
The furthest I've seen a 22.
I could see you over there thinking about that one for
I know
2 minutes.
Could. I know you could.
But the good thing is you can just see the bullet in that case.
Yeah.
You can. That's just hilarious.
And with the sun, and speaking of it's educational, with the sun behind you,
Silver
or
bullet.
to the side of you, you see that little circle going down. Or I was up at the 1,000-yard range one time, 1,000-yard range one time. I was at the opposite end of John Buhay, who was. I'm going to touch on him real quick. I think he's the only one that has ever cold bored that 3,500-yard target in Raton.
I think so.
With a 375.
I think so too.
But one time I was watching him shoot a 300 Ultra back in the day or something, and I'm at this end and he's at the other end of the range, and we're 100 feet apart, and I just happen to look over and I see the whole side of the bullet go down range because the sun was behind us. That is a really cool experience.
Yeah,
that is. A lot has to line up for that to happen.
I mean, I'm literally 100 yards immediately to his right, or not 100 feet.
But if you were 90 feet or 110 feet, you might not have seen it.
Well, no, just a little different look, but seeing the whole, but the field of view covered the whole distance. The sun was behind us directly on the side of the bullet. It was wild.
So Derek, let's pass it on to you. You're kind of one of the ones here sitting here at the table that has actually owned a 375 Shy-Tac and have played with it a lot.
I was instantly a better person than all of you when I finished the rifle.
Because you played with it.
Yes. No. Yes, I did build a 375 Shy-Tac that was pretty much a clone of what you see here. I think this was before we started carrying Cadex.
Well before.
Yeah, so I started this project. This project took like 2 or 3 years to do. So I was working for a guy in Florida named Scott, and he had access to this 2,000-some yard range in Central Florida in Volusia County. And we would go out there every now and again to shoot his rifle. They were shooting some weird hot 6.5 that I've never heard of, and a 300 rum, and we would just start at 1,000 just to get our feet wet and start moving it back. Went from 1,000 to 1,500, but then to a mile, then to 2,000 yards, a little over 2,000 yards, like 2,050 or so. But I do recall with his 375 before mine was done, doing about a 10 or 11 inch group at a mile with that thing. Now, what's funny is that was a standing record for that sort of mini club at the time. Like 2 months later, some dude's daughter comes by and just smokes that record with like an 8-inch group at a mile. Like, you freaking suck. But yes, I've got a bit of experience with the 375, but it's like shooting a 308 at 800 yards when you're shooting a 375 at 2,000. The dependability of that round to hit that target is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And that thing, I didn't get a chance to go any further with it, but on paper, it should have been a strong performer at 26. especially with being able to dial for that with the ATAC-R that I was running at the time. So that was definitely a really, really fun rifle to have.
Just to clarify what you kind of mentioned there.
Yeah.
2,000. If you want to hit, if your goal is to hit 2,000 yards, 375 is going to be the round to pick to do it most efficiently. So you're not getting beat up more than you have to. You're not wasting more ammo than you have to. It's going to be the most efficient 2,000-yard hitter. Would you all agree on that?
I'd agree.
Yeah, because
338's a little.
It's not
little
strong
weak. Yeah,
at 2K. It's strong at a mile.
Definitely do it.
Yeah, in the same way that a 308 is strong at 800, but okay at 1,000. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. What distance? I mean, what caliber do you need to hit 2,000 with a lot of repeatability, reliability, first round shots? You know, what round to be strong at 2K, and not really have to worry about too much? It's going to be the 375.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, there's going to be people chiming in that they've shot, you know, their 22 to 2,000 yards and made hits, and there's always
just
anecdotal.
Like the guy with the prairie dog in the 308 and the 8-second flight time. You can.
There's always anecdotal evidence of you can do it for less, yes, and you can even do it fairly well for less with the calibers that we already mentioned. But if you're trying to hit 2K with that much,
this will cause you the least.
Yeah, that's
annoyance.
The 375 is definitely the way in.
Yeah.
So one other thing I forgot, we had a couple of us had gone to FTW a few years ago with the Swarovski, Collis, and Bergara guys, and they had at that time a prototype 300 PRC.
Ridgeback?
Yeah. And we had 6 or 7 guys lined up there, and I was, I don't know, second, well, probably more than that because some other guys were in shooting. So I was second or third in line, and I shot, and we were shooting at the 1,813-yard target, I think. And this was
weirdly
factory.
Specific.
Well, people that have been there will know which target it was. I think it was a 3-foot circle.
Okay.
Had a hit indicator on it. And so factory Bergara gun that retails under 2K. Factory Hornady ammo, which was all fairly new because this was 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah. It seems so long ago because I finished my 300 PRC right as COVID started, and 300 PRC ammo went from $38 to $1 million per box.
Like all of it. We had all these guys lined up on the line, just kind of passed the gun down. And so after I shot, I just went to spotting they had Collis 525s on all these guns. So I think I was hitting somewhere in 4.5, 5 mils of wind because this was like a 20, 25 mile an hour wind. It wasn't full value. I don't remember exactly what the direction was, but
a fair amount.
So I would go down, would pass the gun to the next guy, and I'd start calling when I'm like, all right, try here. So I was varying between, we were maxing out the wind on that. So it was 4 to 6 mils of wind, which is a lot if someone wants to do the math.
You're way off on that reticle.
So we just kept holding instead of dialing because it was changing. So we just go down the line, and I think more than half of the guys remaining hit on the first shot. I was very happy with my wind calling that day, more than any other day in my life probably.
He has a badge to prove it.
So, but then everyone that didn't hit the first shot hit the second shot with that Bergara rifle at 1,800 with factory 300 PRC ammo.
That's
terrific.
Awesome.
So that's kind of another, 300 PRC, 338s. They'll do 2K, but this may be the thing to do it a little more easily. But I mean that if one could have seen that whole trace loop, it would have been pretty interesting with 6 mils of wind.
Well, I'm sure.
So you can do it you don't need all of the money in the world to hit a mile plus.
Yeah, cheapest way to get there. What do you think? Bergara and 300 PRC?
Pretty much that's
there.
That's about it.
Yep, maybe an NX8.
Yep.
2.5 to 20, 4 to 32, something like that. Figure out the drop and what you need there, but
get her done.
Yeah, it should be there. And I don't know how far up we were, but
so $4,000 plus scope and plus mounts, maybe. So yeah, about $4,000, maybe a little bit over after mounts and bipod and tax and that sort of stuff to hit with pretty good dependability at 2K.
All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in today for another episode of Group Therapy. Please be sure to leave in the comments here what's your furthest shot you've ever made an impact on, what's your setup like, or future conversation pieces. If you want us to keep diving deeper into ELR, we'll gladly do that. So be sure to like and subscribe and comment below.